afternoon. Welcome to the Philosophical Research Society for today's panel discussion about the Spiral Universe, our current gallery show here at PRS with MADAMX. Also in attendance today, we have PRS librarian and curator Dama and PRS contributing scholar Devon Deimler, PhD. Very excited for this panel. This has been a fantastic show. It's one of my favorite shows that we've ever had here at the Philosophical Research Society. And if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, the gallery will be open after the event, as well as our library. There are some of MADAMX's pieces in there as well. A little bit about this place real quick, if it happens to be your first time here. PRS was founded in 1934 by Manly P. Hall, who was a seeker, a comparative philosopher, a prolific author and lecturer. And as you see from the trailer, his most famous work is The Secret Teachings of All Ages. These days, we are a 501c3 arts and events nonprofit. We have a wide range of events going on every month. Workshops, lectures, film screenings, performances, panel discussions like this. We also have a lot of meetups, book groups. We have a tarot salon coming up. That's a new event that's starting next Saturday. We have an astrology salon as well. We have a Manly P. Hall reading group. We have a lot of community events like that, which I really love. So there's a lot going on here every month. So if you are interested in learning more about our events programming, you could check out our website, which is prs.org. And we also have, the gallery, and we're able to have monthly gallery shows here. So I'm really looking forward to this panel. And so I think at this time, I'm going to invite our PRS librarian and curator to the stage. Everyone join me. Please welcome Dama. Everybody's coming up?
I was like, we can all come up together. I guess I'll sit here because my mic, I need the clicker. Put you in the middle, Gail. Should I call you Gail or MADAMX tonight? Welcome, everybody. This is really a pleasure to be here and to be talking to both incredible people, humans, and artists. When we started talking about having this show here, Kelly Carmina, who is the executive director of PRS, introduced me to MADAMX's work by having some of her zines in the bookstore. And the zines are available today. You can go browse them, and there's so much in there that we can't talk about all the elements of MADAMX's life and trajectory. But the zines were my introduction to her practice. And I remember looking at them and thinking how and where and who is this person, who is MADAMX. And it has been a mystery for me for a few years until we met about to do this show here. And it was a serendipitous thing that happened between her and Kelly, seeing each other, and then in communication, she said yes to having a show here at PRS, and Kelly invited me to curate the show, and then we were introduced to each other. And I came to to MADAMX studio, and in conversation with her and looking at her work, I was just blown away. And I don't have many words, but I really felt like I was in the presence of an artist of our times that needed to be seen and that needed to be exhibited, and that also needed to be talked about in various spaces. And hopefully this is the first of many, and hopefully her work takes, various spaces and timelines. But I'm very excited that this is your second solo exhibition in your lifetime here with us. There is something about also having her work here that takes the span of life from for over 30 years. The earliest works we have on display is from the 70s, and we go as recent as 2024. And we'll go over the slides with you as we discuss. But also we are in conversation with Devon, who is a mythologist, an artist, a curator herself, an educator, and who also was just introduced to MADAMX's work through this space. And Devon has given talks here about various various subjects, but the latest being the Herman's manuscript, which is an ancient alchemical manuscript we carry in our library that reminds us a lot of, it has elements that brings back the symbolism and the imagery that also MADAMX has used in her work. And I'll have her talk about that too. And I'm not going to introduce anyone else here, but I want you to speak for yourselves. But I want to say, I want to read a quote by you, MADAMX, that I would like. Where do I click? Point. Here. Is it on? Oh, I see the green light. Thank you. We made a poster for the show, which is also using one of her works, but I want to read this quote. It seems that what is essential and fundamental in understanding transformation is the integration of form in formlessness, or light in absence of light. One must understand that those two are not separate. They are not in conflict. They are in complete oneness. I'd like to ask you, MADAMX, how do you feel about your work as some form of cyclical experience that you've had, in a sense of feeling also one within oneself, oneness, and bring us to, I guess, inviting you to bring us into your world in your own words. How did this all begin for you as an artist, as a seeker?
Well, I think, is this sound, everybody, you can hear me? Really the beginnings of my seeking were inspired by a feeling of being so fragmented and so disconnected and so not connected to myself in parts. And after being like conditioned with thoughts that I had not created, so I felt like I had a mind of fragmented ideas. And I wanted to find what was the truth. What if anything held these disconnected thoughts and ideas together? And it became a whole adventure seeking for me through my visual work. And I didn't know where I was going with this, but it did lead me to a connected visual idea of unity. And as I said, it wasn't something that I thought, well, I'm going to find this. It was something that just happened as a result of seeking and questioning and an attempt to get closer to the truth, what was true for me, to connect what was my inside deepest feelings with the reality around me, or even what I was expressing in my artwork. So there's always been a kind of a back and forth between an expression, which I tried sincerely to represent the truth of what was happening in me, and then, using that would be a feedback, and then that would create for me another unit of something that I could build on, because if it was based on what was the deepest self in me, then I felt like I was standing on something solid. I wasn't just collecting disparate ideas or anything like that. It was like I was finding something solid, at least for me. And as I kept doing that, then the rest of these ideas and images just came as part of that.
The earliest works in the show are your vessels, the travelers, made with old newspaper, and we have them kind of showing in here in the screen as a starting point to your immersion into the world of MADAMX and this trajectory through time that you had in experience with what you call the eternal culture. Were the vessels your entry point? Did you feel a connection then to something else that you couldn't yet foresee because it was so early on? Because as you say, you fell in, and then later on you realize where you were going. But at first you build vessels, which I find so interesting that the beginning of this work was creating the vessels to travel with.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that's true, like in all in my creative work, that I really don't know what I'm doing. I give myself to the process, and then as I see what's coming from it, then I can learn from what is reflected to me. So yeah, I was doing those vessels, and the vessels are both in the eternal realm and in the physical realm, and I didn't really think anything about it when I was doing that. I was just doing it, you know. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. So,
well, you certainly seem like you do right now.
well, yeah, in hindsight, things are, you know, can make up reasons and explanations and understanding.
Yeah.
And
so you were learning in the process of doing.
Oh yes. That basically.
Yeah.
That was that. The process was the kind of the creating something that was solid for me, because it was made out of real, tangible, felt experiences and images that were referring to what was real and felt. So.
Oh, well, yeah, Dama and I were talking a bit in the library about the early work with the boat people and how it, in our imagination, they almost came to sort of pick you up and onboard you, and and then they repeat so much throughout your work. And I thought maybe one other area I thought I kind of saw them, and this is me maybe stretching my own, you know, sense of visual patterns, but the sculpture and the depictions you have of MADAMX herself or themselves, that face is very elongated and looked to me almost like one of the boats itself, that it sort of has that stretch of time to it, and I was wondering if that resonated with you at all, or if you might say something about those eternal beings a little bit.
Well,
your own way.
Actually, you know, I was really trying to depict what I saw.
Yeah.
So I wasn't making up something. The boats themselves are kind of a metaphor, because we're traveling through time. You know, even as we're sitting in this moment, or we're enjoying this moment, but we're all on a trail, our own individual trails through time. And so the boat is the metaphor of that dimension that we're in, that we're, a lot of times, you know, we totally don't think about it, or we forget about it. But the image of MADAMX is an attempt to depict what I saw in as directly. It's not an embellishment, or it's not it's not even like an expressive image. I just tried to be accurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that image comes through also not just in sculpture, but it comes in all of your paintings, drawings. There's a silhouette of that of your portraiture, kind of stamped throughout these different images. One is, I don't know if I does this have a little light on the remote? Think of it. There's a laser. Oh, yeah, like this. If you guys can see, this is the silhouette of the sculpture that's in the library. I saw when looking at your work, the elements of sculpture and 2D and 3D merge. It's everywhere. All your sculptures belong to the paintings, and all your paintings have sculptural elements in it. I love that about it. You are very consistent with your palette. You're very consistent with your sensibility as an artist, and it's really beautiful to see, and actually rare to also see every layer of your process imbued into this beautiful gestures that you transform over and over again, because they are transformations of the same idea. Speaking of that, in segue to your portrait, I want to pull up this image, which is, I think it's one of the first pieces I saw that you revealed as like, it's a scroll, and it's a very long scroll. It's in the gallery right now, and it has, I would say, a more matured version of your sketches, of your sketchbook that you also have in the library. And from this, you created a sculpture, correct? That was the time, which we have,
The model.
The model of time. The model of time. These are all sketches. I'll go a little slower through them. I just want to show you the sculpture as well, the model of time. So beginning with the scroll, guided by the sketches and into the model of time, can you talk about your process in like going from the drawings to the physical object? Also, you're very physical with your work. You build this yourself.
Yes.
Which a lot of people ask. Like, she built her own frames. She carved those by hand. It's all done in her little studio in the back of her house, and in I don't know where else, in the kitchen. You probably work everywhere in your house. It's magnificent. It's everywhere, and that is it's so also rare to encounter an artist who has a multitude of skills to create an idea, to create a story. How is that for you? How do you learn to teach yourself, I guess, those skills in the process of trying to tell a story, to share these imagery?
It's something I really never thought about, because it's like a natural kind of outpouring. When there was a need for something three-dimensional, I just started. For example, the boats are made of paper, just rolled up and tied, and some of them I painted. But then I wanted something that was a little more solid and more lasting, so I started. There was always scraps of wood around, because we lived in lofts, and when you live in a loft, you're always building things, and so there'd be scraps of wood, and this little scrap of wood, this would be a great figure, and so then just by experimenting, I mean, it's
until something would reveal itself. Yeah.
Yes, kind of, but to connect with what you were saying about that, all the things are the individual images are like one story. They're like my story, but it's as it's unfolding, like it has different from a different perspective, or a different aspect of it. Like one thing that I've always been interested in is like if you're making an image, say artists make images of people, and they mostly show like what a camera would show. We see an outside image. But what about all of the rest of that person? What the inner part of that person? What about their feelings? What about their thoughts? What about their perceptions and their senses? And what about the whole realm of information that's inner? And that is something that I've tried to depict in addition to the just the external image, if that makes sense. Because we have a lot of depth to us. Everyone does. And there's much more to us than just the external features. And I think by the more that's included in our perception, self-perception, that we're on our way to wholeness as we include. So that's always been something that's seems very important, and
how you represent that also as a spiral. The spiral, or the labyrinth, or the pineal gland. There's a lot of spiral shapes in nature, and it's also a shape that represents like going in and out,
mm-hmm.
right, of oneself,
mm-hmm.
right, going in and out.
Mm-hmm.
There is, that image really resonates as like part of our trajectory
mm-hmm.
in life of
mm-hmm.
finding the center.
Mm-hmm.
And getting there. You represent that beautifully too, finding the center. We talked a little bit about the symbolism of the spiral too with Devon. I want you to.
Oh, yeah. I can't pick which direction I want to try to nudge us in a little bit. I love the spiral image from mythology and the labyrinth. I also have been appreciating how that shows up in your work, even just through the scroll itself. Like that seems to make a spiral and unfurl it. And I was also thinking about your use of wood as a medium, and how there seemed to be, like the tree itself, the source of wood, has that circling component as it grows, but still that vertical axis as well. And so I was wondering if there might be more that you would say about how you've chosen that as a medium. I really love how you work with it. And I wanted to also see if you might, when we were talking in discussion a month ago or so, I asked about how just your relationship to sculpture and why you like making sculptures, and you had a really interesting response, which had to do with sculpture allows you to see all the sides.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that, because so much of your work is about seeing the unseen, not the unreal, but just like what we're not seeing.
Yeah.
And that the three-dimensionality allows you to actually walk around it or rotate it, the sculpture in the library, if nobody's visited that. I just thought that was so profound. I thought, could you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah. At one point, I started to make spheres, mm-hmm. because the circle was so important to me, mm-hmm. and it became three-dimensional. And one of the interesting things about the sphere was that there's always a hidden mm-hmm. part of it, and it's hidden because your place of perception, you see one side of it. What's hidden is in the back. You can see it by changing your point of perception, by moving around it or by moving the thing itself. But that seemed to be very like a metaphor for the way that we are, because there's some part of, if we're spheres, there's some part of us that you can see from one perspective, and there's always something hidden and I found that to be a very expressive truth in the three-dimensional afforded me to see that in kind of in a physical way, and
yeah. I just love that as one solution of sorts to reconciling the problem of opposites, which usually involves like, well, you have to do very deep work on your unconscious, and you have to, like, there's all these psychodynamics, and I love that you also offer those are very important, but I love that you offer the option of make a sculpture or experience a sculpture, and in that way you are sort of performing that act of seeing the unseen sides. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Dama pulled this up. Of course, that's why you asked me that. I forgot. Oh, no. So I pulled these images just as, not to say like, oh, these are the same, but one of my other jobs is to work in the archives of a few mythologists and depth psychologists, and Maria Gimbutas, she called herself an archaeomythologist, archaeologist, but super steeped in folklore and mythology. And these are some low-quality screenshots from her book, Language of the Goddess. And one of her, she's very, very focused on visual patterns that adorn these artifacts that she's looking at, and for her, they're all representations of a goddess figure in one way or another, but she pays attention to the symbols as much as to carbon dating or something like that, to tell her about, what were these cultures like so long ago. And one of the primary symbols she traces is a spiral. And for her, it's a sign of, movement, fluidity, and therefore connected to the female body experience and death and rebirth and all of these things that she subscribes under the category of the goddess. And I just wanted to bring them up as an interesting reference point, because some of these, especially this one behind us on the right, really reminded me of some of your early drawings, just the many, many spirals. Mm-hmm. And so she would call this kind of thing the alphabet of the metaphysical, that it's even Sumerian are coming up with sort of what we then develop into language. These are all these abstract patterns that still communicate something, and for her, again, it was the goddess. But I thought I wanted to bring these in, not to say like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that I'm curious if you knew about her work or these ancient artifacts at all as you've come to develop your own, and if maybe there's something interesting about that showing up in prehistory as well as in your work, and maybe there were some experiences of a similar sort back then among people. Who knows?
Well, I agree with you. I think that there is a common experience, or a common, like even though we're separated by time, mm-hmm. that we can still look at the same mm-hmm. phenomenon. And what I was seeing in those spirals was they tend to be connected, like one spiral to an opposite spiral, mm-hmm. which to me symbolizes these basic opposition.
Yeah.
And they're connected, even in there, they're connected.
That's what I liked, and I just wanted to sort of bring it in because it excited me to see that they were picturing the same thing. They always are connected. So it's a spiral. It's spirals. It's like always, this plural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the spiral is also a growing pattern, mm-hmm. or it's either growing or it's disappearing. So those two movements are what I see as like a very fundamental in the motion of time, in the structure.
Yeah, and you have something in your book that's in the gallery, Eternal History. That's.
I have it here.
Oh, you have it there. Yeah, you say something in there really well, but we've been talking about movement a lot, and the spiral as an image of movement, and how very much these pieces feel like they're moving all the time. They're not static. They talk between each other. They have a lot of dynamics within each other. But you describe the eternal time and the eternal beings as having an art of motion in that pamphlet.
Yes, that is like it's come after a study of structure and the like design of this movement. Then I started to thinking about how does that come in my individual self, or how does that apply to how does it apply to us? And just like an artist tries for perfection, we can't achieve perfection, or maybe there isn't even such a thing as perfection, but we can use that to develop our skills and our quality of expression. And I think that to develop that quality is to develop the quality of the movement, so that movement is a flowing and growing thing through time. It's not a struggle or a conflictual thing. That the process of developing the quality is like a natural teacher to how to like avoid crashing into things, or how to becoming more subtle in relationship to other things that may cross one's path, or be so opposite that one wants to get away from it. And that learning to live in this world of opposites with quality is like an art itself, and an art of culture, a cultural art, and an art of just being human, and how do we use all of the energies that we take part in. How do we use that with quality, and with learning, and with teaching, and with understanding, and also to glean the wisdom that we take part in as we like let this energy flow through us.
Yeah, can I'd say one more thing
Yes.
that came to mind? Okay, I took a lot of notes when we were talking a month ago, and they were just things I wanted the rest of the world to hear a bit from you. I remember you said that a lot of your work has to do with paying attention with sincerity, and that has a way of also dissolving oppositions. I think that seeing things in terms of opposites, sometimes that can be helpful. It's often debilitating, but I respect the contours of differences, but that seeing things more like contrasts than contests, maybe, or I'm thinking of this episode in Jung's Red Book, which we can talk about too, in which Satan actually tells Jung, one of his visitors is Satan, and that Jung's suffering over opposites is not respecting them as differences. And when I think you pay attention with sincerity, you can really appreciate the details of things, and that they're all, on this in this world together. You know, there's no sort of space or place that doesn't have universe to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all a big prelude to get to this other point that you made, which we asked you if your relationship with MADAMX is sort of what we might call a channeling, and you, Dama, although I also read things that you said in that Eternal History pamphlet, suggested gardening as a metaphor instead. So maybe you both can talk to that.
Well, I literally just opened a page about that.
Oh, great.
Because this is, I read the Eternal History, which Eternal History was written by MADAMX, was also to me a way into your work, and describing the work visually was quite a task, but also describing the work as a trajectory of your own experience. And I did say channeling, because for me, I can relate to channeling as a channeler myself, and I feel like I can connect with that realm in language, but I understand that for you it wasn't really channeling. It was you went into a place where I described it as gardening after, because you say something like the eternal culture and what is it like? What's the future like? And this is in your own words. I don't know if you remember writing this. But she says, picture it like this. A gardener plants a beautiful garden made of many different plants. Some he chooses for shade, others for the beauty of their bloom, etc., each providing a service particular to itself. Now, in order to assemble all of them, the gardener must begin the seeds, so he plants them in protective beds, separated from one another. And not until they are sufficiently grown does he begin to assemble them in their rightful place in the garden he planned. Like the little plants, the cultures of all the spheres of the universe are growing in their separate beds, and each is distinct to provide its particular service. The one thing that they all have in common is that they are all destined for the same garden, and each culture of beings is perfecting, with its growth, its own individual part. The individual part grown in the eternal culture is the pure reflection of its consciousness, which enables it to see the beauty of variety and the interlocking relationship between cultures of different kinds. I don't know how this can be described any more perfect and beautifully. And in context of also our world today, we can't avoid being present in 2025 and living under a lot of distress and war and chaos and the fight of opposites. Everyone is just fighting each other off the cliff. And somehow we have some guardians like yourself that are holding on to something else. And you are a gardener. I see you as a gardener, guiding us into like how to become gardeners. So can you speak to that as you wrote this beautifully in your own words?
Well, I do see like life, the metaphor of a seed really seems to be applicable to all kinds of life, not just to plant life, but to animal life, to human life. That each of us is a seed, and that as we grow, that seed becomes what it is, what was contained in the seed's potential. And if you take that to when you see your neighbor, to realize, oh, my neighbor is also a seed, another individual seed, and I might not have any idea what that seed can give or does give. And so rather than to come with a judgment based on oneself, it's not like me, so therefore I can judge. If one can just open up to try to see, like what I was saying before, more than just the surface, but there's a deep inner
Roots. And
Roots,
some of us
yes.
are uprooted, and we have been replanted, and we don't really like the soil.
That's true.
And that's isn't I can relate to that. Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, as an artist, one of the most important things is to see, and I'm totally interested in perfecting or cleansing being able to see better, clearer, and in a more expansive way. And the only way or one of the ways that I know to do that is to take a deep breath and to set aside my prejudices or my preconceptions and just take it in as if it was new, and as if there is something there for me, in whatever it is that I want is in front of me, that there is something there. There's more than just what's on the surface, and who knows what's in the depths of that person or that whatever, the plant or whatever it is, that by opening myself, I can take part in that. I can experience it. I have the choice to either open myself to it and experience it or not. And I think that there's wonders to be experienced that they're just waiting for us to set aside our prejudices and judgments and just take a fresh look. And that's very interesting to me, and I'm pursuing it. I think that it yields. I think it has the potential to yield a lot.
I'm sharing here an image that we talked a little bit about too, of the back to the figures of the Divine Feminine in your portrait. This is, you call a self-portrait.
Yes.
I mean, I want all of us to have a self-portrait like this. Yeah. What would be our versions of that? It's amazing. It's and the elongated faces, the face and the sculpture. You also build a sculpture that's with that same gesture, which I think we can see in the library right here.
I love that one.
MADAMX, the messenger of time. Do you want to speak to that, the imagery of the portraiture and the vessels?
Let's see. I can try to. I don't know if I can, though. I'm just deeply fascinated by it. I mean, I offered that other image of figures from Gimbutas's book. She's sort of a curator too, archaeo-mytho curator, but just as sort of another kind of kindred echo across time that felt kindred. And we can't say what those objects were for those people, but I think I am fascinated. Just that one I wanted to show for the wood, and that you've retained the bark on this one, which I thought could be interesting to ask about. I'm also curious about the dots. There's the other sculpture of an eternal or cosmic being. That's the black one with the white. What I tend to think of as stars. I'm not sure, but I've found that one really interesting for how they become a texture on top of the black figure. So I would rather maybe hear you speak to it, because I'm just fascinated by it, and I did want to appreciate with what you both said about the gardening, that I really feel like there's such a sense of care in your work and cultivation and paying attention and craft and love and devotion, and your work lets us experience what you experienced,
Yeah.
in some way. We get to enter that world and that experience too, but it also, and this is a great example, cultivates that careful paying attention. You have to. There's so much detail here, and I love spending time in all of the worlds within these. But yeah, to the question of portraiture, or the I don't know, we could ask about so
The other
much.
versions of ourselves.
Yeah, the other versions of ourselves. Yeah.
I do think the work is so intricate, and you have worlds within worlds. I love that, because even in the sculptural, the cosmic being in the library, if you pay attention and as you start to look around her in the 3D form, you have complete paintings within the vessel that, like, you could just look at that for a while and think about, what is this? And same with the paintings that, like this one behind us, there's so much there.
Yeah.
Like, when you go into them, is it intuitively just begin from beginning to end in one take? How do you work in the process of, like, creating so much depth within the 2D image by giving us these little narratives? I guess it's like, how do you? There's a sense of timelessness about them, but also there's like I'm just curious as an artist too. Like, how do you find an ending to it?
That's a good question.
How do you find like, this is where I must stop?
Well, the ending is like in the present.
Yeah.
When I've incorporated everything that's inside to that level, to the present, then it's complete. It doesn't make sense.
No,
it does.
Because it is like an adventure trail or something, and as I'm going along, I'm noticing different things. I'm contemplating the meanings of those things, and I want to assemble them into the garden in a way. And so it just kind of happens naturally that if I have this basically a big idea, which is a lot of times a circle, that, well, within that circle there's a myriad of distinctions. And that are part of the structure of that circle. And so it's just natural to want to incorporate all those things into a wholeness. That impulse to take disparate things and put them together, I think that's like really instinctual, for me anyway, to this desire for wholeness, the desire to have a feeling that this all makes some kind of sense to all of it. All of it, the parts I like and the parts I don't like, that it's all here and present, and that it's I want to see how it fits together. I want to see the whole, how it creates this wholeness. And that's just a deep, deep desire for me. But you were asking before about, it's not in there, about
Which
the
one?
dots.
Oh, yeah. Can you speak to that?
The dots are the point of emanation.
Okay, yeah.
So
they're
in the
coming out.
darkness, like in this one, the darkness is the absence of form. It's an absence, an area of absence. And when that absence gives forth an emanation into form, that's represented by the dots. And also when those forms that were emanated return. So it's both those things. And that's a common symbolic way that I used in so many things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's early in the sculpture too. I think these are more recent works, right? These are the paintings are from the 2000s.
This one is earlier than that.
This is earlier than that.
This is earlier, yeah.
This is. I'm going to go back to real quick to the sculpture that Devon mentioned, which is in the gallery. This one.
Yeah.
Which is this, yeah. And that's a quote by you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And in the aspect that is nothingness, the ongoing structure, which is easier to see in the light or in form, is continued in the absence. And it doesn't just disappear. You have an integral relationship in a transcending oneness, and that integral relationship is not lost in the absence of things. It's continuous. You really, with the sculpture and the drawings and the parrot, like we really give this. It's a continuous light. You can't. And it's also, I think we talked a little bit previously about your search for giving form to the formless, to what's ethereal, outside of what you described as like our vessel, our body, here on this earth. But how do you give form to what's beyond it? Mm-hmm. And contain it into a vessel. Mm-hmm. That is a form that you gave us, and it's contained, but it's also infinite. I see the dots as like, to me, I see the dots as just the stars, the universe. It's just beyond our capacity to reach, but it's also here.
Yeah. That element of your work really takes me. It really gets me. I sort of, the first time I saw it, which was before meeting you, I feel like it gets me in like my Lynch centers, like the parts of me that really get hit by certain similar things that David Lynch's work can put forward, but with a totally different sensibility and story to it. And I really do appreciate in this time the way, that one too, yeah.
Yeah, this one too.
Yeah, when it becomes a part of a figure, there's really something powerful about that. But how your work does, it has that dialogue and sense of affirmation for eternal time and finite time, from what I think I understand correctly. You have a lot of modern imagery in the paintings too. There's cars zipping around, there's skyscrapers, yes. And also the way that you've just described the necessity of having to give form to this formless experience, that it was a way that you almost had to metabolize it and get it into some form, mm-hmm. In order to be able to be here mm-hmm. again. Could you say anything about that you'd feel comfortable sharing, or any remarks that have come to mind?
Well, one thing I think that I've come to see and to understand that is maybe different is this in this spherical way of seeing things. The sphere is is unending. It doesn't have a line has a beginning and an end. Or if we're in a flat Earth, we could go out this way, and at the end we fall off. Or we have a life, we're born, and we die, and we fall off. Kind of, that's it. But in a spherical perspective on things, so it's a bit different. That it's a continual transformation. And there isn't a place where it just ends and there's nothing. That's that place where there is absence or void, or what we're calling ending, is a presence mm-hmm. that is part of a continual transformation. So, as in the sphere, we're continuing and we go right through that place of absence. I think that there's something that could be very helpful for us in the way that we see things. It would certainly expand our idea of what is the landscape of life and what the huge extent of impact that we're having in a moment that is really a step-by-step structure through, in infinite life. I don't know if that speaks to what...
No, it does. I really loved how you just said that right now, and I think I had a somewhat disjointed way of trying to articulate the Buddhist stuff at first, but I think that in her reading, that alphabet of the metaphysical and the spiral is demonstrating the same thing. And what other geometry could you could you better maybe articulate that through, where there's a continuous experience of life, death, life. For her, that's a real symbol of life and death, but not finality, that it tendrils off into the next spiral and so on. And also you can read it backwards too, and follow them any which way. But I feel like that's a similar sentiment in your work, but you also, I'm really grateful for your work happening in this time when we're here to experience it, and where you incorporate all these other images that have happened between those Neolithic, inscriptions and now. I think it just has this fullness to me, and with your color palette too, which this is a great example for. It's very beautiful.
There's something that is a question for me. It's always a question, because it seems like, well, one learns something, like, say, our ancestors were drawing those spirals, and they were obviously thinking things about them, and then through time you'll see those images again and again and again, and I would think, well, we learned that way back then. Mm-hmm. Why do we have to keep learning that over and over and over again? But it does seem like that there is this repetition, and I call it echoes in that our learning happens through time, through this kind of echoing of the same lessons over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And then when we look back at history, or in artifacts, or in ritual objects, we see the same things. We see somebody was working with these ideas. They were trying to understand. They were interacting with them. And then to realize, well, here I am, thousands of years later, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm working with I'm looking at circles and spheres and spirals, and I'm contemplating them, and I'm trying to glean all the wisdom and the information. What does that mean in my life and my actions, and the way that I go about my life? And it just seems like that repetition is necessary.
It seems that way. Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, here's an image behind us that's from the 18th century, and it's found in an old alchemical manuscript in the sphere. And I remember I saw this a little bit before we installed the work, but as we installed the work in the library, there's such a parallel in like this world, this particular drawing, where she is with the sphere, and we're talking about the cyclicality of the world, the layers, and the worlds within worlds, and the womb entrance, and the going inwards and backwards, birth, rebirth. It's all in here in this one image.
Yeah.
And in your work, I see that too. It's like you're describing this circular, the circular experience as being our way within ourselves of like repeating to ourselves what we maybe have already seen, but we forgot. We have to remember. Maybe we have to remind ourselves over and over and over again, generations after generations, to just pay attention. And because we are full of distractions, and we are living in worlds of so much oppression, and so many people are just surviving and getting by, right? And to have access to something else is so important. Art is so important, poetry and music and all these things. And maybe our way to do it is through art, because it is a way to reach, go to that the form in formlessness, go to the language without language. Art can do that for us, right? It's because sometimes of our language, our way of communication is not a way to access it.
Yeah, either it's not a way, or it's a way that's so fraught with the past prejudices or judgments or ingrained ways of going about things that it gets in the way.
Gets in the way.
And I think that happens in religion a lot.
Right.
I mean, it's happened because.
Yeah.
But with an image, or with an image, you can if you open yourself to it, you can bypass those things that are getting in the way, and you can just receive whatever it is.
Yeah. Without judgment. But you have to learn. I think we have to relearn to receive without judgment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or to give to give and receive. There is you. I just want to share this one picture, because the gallery, if you haven't seen it yet, Gail was a part of the installation, and she wrote on the walls the title, her name, and the Spiral Universe. She spent her time. It was like almost like the walls weren't done until she touched it herself. This whole exhibition was very much like just hands-on, just us and Eric, who is our in-house art installer, who was like made a part of the install. And I love that about you too, that you want to be a part of it. The process, it doesn't end with the work. The process only continues as it's being received. And I love that about you. I want to go back to what you brought earlier, because we're jumping back and forth in images here, but the elements of the Red Book that you brought up, which I can we have in the library as well. And I want to go to the very end. And then we can also open up for questions in the audience. So prepare some questions if you have any to ask any of us in MADAMX. But the mandala. And the mandalas that Gail builds in the mandala in the Red Book.
Yeah, this is an early one, pre-Red Book, that I just threw in here because it reminded me a little more of your aesthetic, Gail, whereas the Red Book mandalas and paintings tend to take on more of this medieval illuminated manuscript mosaic aesthetic, which is also really remarkable. But when we were talking in the library a while ago, we brought up Jung, and you said Jung is a friend.
Yeah.
And and there's great distinctions between the type of experience he had and how it was navigated by him and what you had, and your purposes, but you also do share the element of this work kind of incubating for a while and having its its time of protection before sharing it publicly. And so I wanted to maybe bring him in and let you speak to that a bit. That friend in Jung, or yeah.
Well, the reason I called him a friend was because of that. I felt that there was a similarity of experience, and that kind of an experience can be very isolating and difficult, because it's difficult for other people to find a place where it is received.
Yeah.
And I felt that Jung must have had that feeling that he couldn't release this experience or his expressions about it because of fear of it not being, not only just not received, but it might be detrimental to his career, his more academic career. But I felt a commonality because I felt for many years the isolation of, I've had this experience and I don't have anybody to I can't share it with anyone who shares an understanding. I felt very, very isolated. And I just had to come to terms with that and accept that. But when I did learn about Jung and this whole amazing inner experience that he had, I suddenly felt like there was a relationship. There was, if he was alive, we could have shared experiences or something. That there was, that I guess that I wasn't alone in having that experience. It took a while to even feel comfortable in expressing it, and that's developed, and it's gotten better. And at the same time, it's gotten better. I felt like there were people that could receive it. More and more.
Yeah, and I do think. Thank you for sharing that. I do feel that he is a great kindred spirit in that way, and that we're lucky in this time to have, the Red Book was only published for the public in 2009, and it was, for him, it was a real ordeal. He called it the confrontation with the unconscious, and he really went through this process in his own way, but I think similar to you in that he had great respect for the images and a real sense of their own autonomy, in his own terms, coming from a collective unconscious. But he feared that his reputation as a scientist would be greatly damaged if this were to come out that he was, having visions or taking seriously these visitors, and but we're fortunate in this time, I think, to have that come out, to have Hilma af Klint's work, who another great parallel, which as you pointed out, Dama, she wanted to share her work, but was shut down. Jung sort of did make an executive decision of his own in a way, to put it in a vault, and time would tell when the right time was. But we're fortunate, I think, to receive these things, and I think what your work and this work does is allow us to affirm our own experiences that might, be some degree of not necessarily what you or Jung experienced, but, to take that part of the psyche seriously and beautifully. And
I really agree. I agree that there is so much in us that we either overlook or we reject for whatever reason, but that it's always there to inform us, to I think of it as a guiding, that the natural energy of life is a guide for me. And it really directs where I go, my creations, as well as, physically what is happening, and that the closer I am, the more harmonious I am with that, the closer I feel I am to the truth, if there is such a thing. And that is, that's a goal, a goal, not a goal that's out there somewhere, but it's in every moment. To be close to the truth is to be on the right path. And I trust that, even though I maybe don't know what is out there in where this is all leading. But I feel like if I'm in harmony with energies inside of me, that way I'm close to the truth of going forward. So.
Yeah, I love that authenticity about the inner world, and how that's like you also know when an art piece is finished, not just by its sort of completeness on paper, but that it's at its stopping place internally.
Yeah. Being on the edge of what is coming to being. That's
Yeah, and this is just a great image of friendship. I
agree. When you sent that image, I was like, oh
yeah.
my gosh, look at this.
Yeah.
And then this is MADAMX's like smaller sculpture that's in the library right now. This in the vessels are in relationship and friendship with Jung's page 55.
Yeah.
It's interesting because he really has the opposites in.
Yeah.
You have the deity on the boat, I think, and then you have the monster in the in the depths.
Yeah.
And they seem to be doing fine together.
They seem to be doing fine together.
I have no idea what is said up there.
But also, you don't use a lot of gold in your color palette at all, except for this particular sculpture. There's not much gold, and it's also there's no drawings in there. Usually you illustrate the sculptures in depth. This is very clean. It's a very specific piece. Can you talk about this piece a little bit? How it came about? Because it stands out a little bit, and it's little.
Yeah,
it's very little. If you're going to say it's massive behind us, but it's a little vessel in a book cabinet in the library that takes you away.
Well, I think of it, I was thinking of really getting down to an essence.
To the essence.
And I didn't, why I didn't, that's just gold, that's just the gold presence on that boat. But on the boat part of it, it's very detailed.
Yes.
Which, metaphorically, adds up to, well, in the eternal realm, the complexity and the development, the structure that has accumulated there is beyond complex, beyond, it just, think of an eternity of memory structures being contained there. But in the physical essence, it's just one. It's only one. It's gold, and that's
and I
the
love
symbol.
that the image of the gold in Jung's image too. It's the gold.
Oh, that's right.
It's the yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And around it, it's all the layers of the memories and that carry the vessel away. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of shared gravitation towards circles between you both, and this, there's a lot of sort of Egyptian-esque motifs, it seems to me, in some of your imagery, and this one here would be evocative of that too.
Do you know the what he called this, or?
This one, from what I recall, isn't, a lot of the paintings are illustrative of what he's writing about and the encounters he had. This one I don't think is. I think it's on its own. I could be misremembering. But it relates back to, he has one episode with like a scarab beetle, a dung beetle, which is like in Egyptian myth, not to say that this is, a one-to-one with your figures, but each night the sun god has to be restored and go through the underworld, and the scarab beetle brings that up, and it's sort of these cyclical roundabouts on a cosmic level, but also a personal soul level too. And so I think that's in the family of that, but this barge and this, it's sort of a funerary boat. And a lot of those spirals from Gimbutas are from funerary objects as well. So there's something there about, really ushering onward in the death moment. But this episode I think is not really discussed. It's sort of just a very memorable picture with that Leviathan. And I like how you feel like they're getting along just fine. I really like that. It's true. I think we see that big creature and assume it's coming for the boat, but they're just kind of parallel swimmers. Yeah.
It's like your creatures drawn underneath it in the boat. You have lots of creatures too with teeth, and it's why.
Well,
and they're coming, but they're not really coming for you. They're coming with you.
They're on the same trip.
It's accepting the monstrosity of life too.
Yeah.
Yeah.